just know that I give my love and respect, and I apologize here. If anyone hasn't seen my camera, I'm live on the stage here on the YouTube channel. So if you're just turning in live, you can see me now. Finally, I apologize for the wait. Please go ahead and like and subscribe if you haven't been to my YouTube channel. If you're watching me from TikTok, you're watching me from YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, follow, share, like this video. Let's get as many people to join in on this, because this story is going to be interesting. We want to be able to cover as many of these cases here. So we'll talk about it. We'll get right into it. Jordan Hankins, if you're not familiar, was a Northwestern basketball player and member of Alpha Kappa Alpha. Her mother says that hazing trauma contributed to her decision to end her life. Okay. So if you're suffering as far as any type of committing to have any self-harm, self-side, please contact 988 for resource and support. We share these stories again with love and light and grace. Sororities like the Chi Omega at Pitt and Kappa Kappa Gamma at Indiana University. All organizations have also been caught hazing, from sleep deprivation to forced drinking, showing us that this is not just a fraternity issue. So if you didn't already know, I cover hazing topics from a multitude of different backgrounds. I don't just cover whether it's a Black organization or a white organization. I don't focus on just Greek life. I also look at hazing from a standpoint from marching bands to step teams to even honor societies. I've even heard it allegedly that it's happened even at a church organization at Howard University. So alarming to hear that we have smaller groups that have elected to even have hazing, even unofficial ones as well. We cover it all. I cover those stories. Doesn't matter which or where it's coming from, as long as it's about hazing, we want to cover it with respect and grace to the families involved, and be able to help end hazing. So we want to be able to talk about these things here. I'm just going to go right into the main part of this here, as far as Caleb Wilson case. Before I do, we're talking about the Caleb Wilson story. Many of you maybe already remember how everything played out. He lost his life at the Southern University. And when he did lose his life, it shook the whole country. People, many students, parents, educators, basically watched in horror as we see the events that led to how everything played out. People that been watching, essentially, and covering the story, have been mentioning how the people involved, right, the Lyon brothers, even to the members who were actually doing the hazing itself, allegedly essentially said, hey, he was playing basketball. Caleb was doing some type of games late at night. He hurt himself. He dropped him off at the hospital. And somewhere, at later hours, he was confirmed deceased. Okay. And it came out to understand that he was actually at an off-site warehouse that was rented out, and essentially linked to one of the pledges. One of the brothers who were a part of the organization, Omega Psi Phi. That's concerning. And so everything that we know about that case alarmed me, and it started for me to say, we got to talk about this. We got to come together, and I've got to share my story. And I've shared it before, a year before. You can catch my full story and what happened to me on my actual YouTube channel. You can watch it there. But while we're talking about Louisiana, we'll get back to Caleb Wilson. This just came out as well as of today. So while Louisiana is still grappling with the criminal side of hazing in the Caleb Wilson case, just across the state line in Mississippi, okay, a civil lawsuit is raising very different questions. A student named Raphael Joseph has filed a federal lawsuit against the University of Southern Mississippi and the new Theta chapter, if I spelled that wrong or pronounced that wrong, my apologies, of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Joseph says that hazing began back in December of 2022. Pledges were allegedly deprived of sleep and food, threatened as well, and even had money stolen. But the things actually really escalated in April of 2023 during what was called Hell Night. I think many of you are familiar with the term Hell Night, essentially the period of when you're at the last, either the last step in the process when you're online trying to join an organization, Greek letter organization. There is a Hell Night. It's going to be the most brutal night. In my case, there's 3 different stages to it. Each stage got worse after the next. I'm assuming that next part, which I didn't get to, would have been a Hell Night. But that night of Hell Night, Joseph says he was beaten repeatedly with a 2x4 plank of wood. These kind of things hurt. Like, seriously, they hurt to no end. It is painful. If you've never seen what that looks like, it is a very thick piece of wood. I definitely, if you've never got familiar with Theta, if you ever look at a fraternity house and they have or sorority house, to see those paddles, what we call them, essentially that is what that is. So let me go ahead and get into this a little bit further. So the result is he spent 11 days in the hospital. I had about 7 days in the hospital from my side and needed about weeks of recovery, but he spent 11 days in the hospital. He said he needed surgery. That's unfortunate. I also had to have the same thing, 2 surgeries as well. Needed a blood transfusion and months of rehab to learn how to walk again. Wow. I am so sorry for that brother to have faced that kind of pain. It's one of those pains that if you've ever been in a hazing situation or hazing ritual and you've been paddled, you don't forget what that feels like. It is the most uncomfortable feeling. It is painful severely. Don't recommend it. So let's see here. It's my bad, y'all. So we're waiting still for Erica Ramos. So while we still wait, we want to make sure we still continue here a little bit. So he said he needed surgery, a blood transfusion, and months of rehab to learn how to walk again. That's really alarming here. Let's see here. Okay, Erica Ramos is on the TikTok. She tried to request to join. Okay, let's see. Maybe I could get her to join. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, let's see if this will work. Hey, Erica.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. I do not know how to work TikTok. This is the first time.
It's okay. It's all right. Welcome to the show. Did you see the YouTube link? If you can also jump on that one. That'll be great too.
Okay. Where did you send that? Sorry.
You're good. I sent it to your partner in crime, the one we work with. Just
yeah, I know you can hear this.
Yeah, just ask her to just send you that link, because that's the link that we're gonna be using. That's gonna be to the studio. I was wondering. I said, "Man, what's going on?"
Yeah, I have been trying. I'm like, so whatsoever. All right, I'll jump on that one then.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. So Erica is going to be joining us here, y'all. She's going to be on the YouTube side. So go ahead and head over to the YouTube as well. You can watch both if you can. You'll be able to see her commentary. I want to get her plugged in on this, because this case really shocked me that this is the thing that's still going on, and we have young people that are hurting. Yeah, that's a big problem for me. So we're going to get going here. Once Erica shifts over to our YouTube, there you are. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we'll get started here just a second. Once Erica gets going, I apologize for the difficulty here, y'all, but we want to make sure we get as much expert opinion about this case and about the stories here regarding not only Caleb Wilson from Tim Piazza to the newest lawsuit that was presented with the Raphael Joseph lawsuit out of University of Southern Mississippi. We are joined with members of the Lambda, Theta, Alpha sorority, Latin Sorority Incorporated. And so we are grateful to have them join us and share their perspective as well. And so let's wait so we can get her to be on camera and we'll get things going. But I thank you for everyone who's watching and have been patient with us, patient with me as well. Definitely a lot to talk about here. I hope y'all are having a wonderful evening. But this is concerning. This is the kind of thing that I'm really trying to understand. Where do we go from here? So here we go. Okay. All right. Wonderful. Okay. I can't hear you. You have your microphone on? Let's just no problem. Okay. So we'll have Erica Ramos is going to be joining us. If you're watching us from TikTok, you can hear me, but I'd like you to also, if you want to hear the other end of what Erica has to say with us, join our YouTube channel at Cultured Unplugged. Like and subscribe, share the video. This is the kind of conversation that we need to have. So thank you. Erica,
can you hear me now?
Can't hear you for some reason.
Hold on.
I'm not sure why that is, but let me see. Let me try my. Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, you can hear me?
I can hear you great. Perfect. Thank you for joining.
Sorry about that.
All right. So things happen.
Yeah, I told the team.
Fine to us.
Yeah, I warned them in advance.
All right, you're here now. You're here now. Well, welcome to the show. I am really pleased and grateful. For those who don't know, Erica Ramos is a legal expert and attorney who has experience in cases far and wide in reference to this legal spectrum of personal injury, criminal defense. And she comes with the experience of sharing her voice tonight. So we thank her. We thank you for being here during National Hazing Awareness or National Awareness of Hazing Week. Essentially, our focus is to help educate young people, help tell the stories of those who have been harmed due to hazing, and hope to have action, essentially, not even hope. We want to encourage others to take action on every school campus nationwide so that we can help end hazing together. I think I said that right. And tonight's conversation is so important because we had a conversation just a week ago when we talked about a multitude of different reasons why how these things happen, the people that it affects, the stories that I've had, and the parents, especially who live with a lifetime of grief. So having you here is important as we shift the conversation here. So I am deeply troubled. I'm troubled because there's a multitude of these cases that are continuing to happen, and we understand that Caleb Wilson, who lost his life just earlier this year, end of February, there seems to be an epidemic going on. There's even the case with Raphael Joseph, who just came out with a federal lawsuit against Omega Psi Phi, the same fraternity, different chapter. Why do you think these things still happen, Erica?
I think these things still happen because it's more so a society type of thing, right? Your kids, they go off to college, they are left to their own devices, right? And in some cases, it could be those who are the most innocent, right? Those who don't have experiences with other things. And it's that group mentality, right? When you're with other people that you start emulating and doing different things that maybe you've seen on TV or that you've seen others go through, or maybe you're even acting out past experiences, right? So it could happen to even the best people, your kids, whoever. And I think it's one of those things to being uneducated on these issues, right? Education is definitely key.
Agreed. So more on the educational piece, there seems to be now that there are states with the Stop Campus Hazing Act that was passed in December under the Biden administration that basically mandates schools to have their numbers regarding hazing. Though that data now has to be on every school website. It has to be trainings as well on hazing and hazing prevention, which I'm really happy to see. Some schools have been slow to start to get that done, but they do have a deadline. If no one knows, parents, if you're watching, they have until I believe December of this year to get majority of the act implemented, and then followed by next year as well. So schools have increased their efforts, especially this week, in regards to the prevention of hazing and hazing awareness as well. So I'm highly encourage your son, your daughters who are currently in schools right now to get involved, learn as much as possible on anti-hazing and how they can protect themselves. One couple of things that come to mind here as well is we're seeing some things that where I'm coming on to cases every day. I get alerts about hazing cases literally every day. It's not just fraternities, not just sororities, but it comes full spectrum with other groups as well. We're talking about even marching bands, football teams. With this type of understanding, where do you think, as a school's perspective, how much do they really have to focus or pivot to make sure that these cases don't happen again? What are you thinking? What are your thoughts on that? What's their obligation?
Yeah, I think they have a strong obligation, right? Because they are offering these things on their campus. I mean, it happens in high schools too, right? Any type of activities, sports activities where there's groups, these things happen, right? So really, they do have an obligation to ensure that they're educating these students on the issues surrounding this and how it affects individuals and how it can affect themselves, right? A lot of the times they're perpetuating this behavior and they're doing these different things, but they're not thinking of the full spectrum of the consequences. That not only are you hurting someone else, you're hurting yourself too, right? It goes full circle. You're hurting everyone. Everyone loses in that type of situation. So they definitely have an obligation to ensure that they are following the law, right? Because there has to be education, like you said, per the Biden administration signing of this. And a lot of schools are grappling with these different issues of the law that just came out, right? They're getting with their lawyers. They're trying to figure out, how do we navigate this? What do those programs look like? Is there more stuff that we need to include due to the law, how broad that law is? Because the law really provided a national definition of what hazing is. Every state has their own law as it pertains to hazing, whether it be a misdemeanor, a felony, or whatever. But now we actually have a raw definition that is universal for all of the states to follow, right? So now you're looking at two different prongs. You're looking at the federal and the state level, and the schools are really trying to figure out how to get with those types of programs, right? And trying to get everything put into place to ensure that they are protecting everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erica. And I know you're leading by example as a member of the Lambda, Theta, Alpha Latin Sorority Incorporated. And so we appreciate your efforts and the acknowledgement there, because I think you guys are setting the example essentially. And we have a conversation coming up, session coming up on anti-hazing, and we'll be previewing that on this channel here soon. But we're going to be joined by a mother who experienced a loss like no other. Her daughter, Kristen High, she is going to share her perspective as far as what happened. And what we all really need to be understanding of is it's not just the person it happens to, but it's the family who was left behind. And I think for her story, you'll definitely don't want to miss that as well. So before we go further, let's ground ourselves here if we could. So what is hazing? So legally, that by definition, it can vary state by state, but most laws agree on these three core points. It's tied to a group membership, so initiation's requirement. Hazing happens when someone is trying to join, maintain, or advance in an organization, whether it's a fraternity, sorority, sports team, band, or club. It involves the act of risk or harm, any act, physical, emotional, or psychological, that endangers health, safety, or dignity is what counts. And that means the forced drinking, the beating, sleep deprivation, humiliation, even financial exploitation. Consent doesn't really matter. So if a student says, hey, look, I am willingly going through this, or I'm putting myself in this because I really want to be, and people say, well, you're not a victim. I hear that a lot. I've heard that from even a member of Omega Sci-Fi who jumped in on a live and shared his perspective. I see that much more than that. So even if a student agrees to it, the law doesn't accept that as a defense. The responsibility is on the organization and its leaders to not haze. So we look at one clear example. Louisiana's Max Gruver Act defines hazing as any intentional, knowing, or reckless act occurring on or off campus that endangers the physical or mental health or safety of a student in connection with pledging, being initiated into, affiliating with, participating in, or maintaining membership in any organization. So at its core, the law is already there, right? Why do you think, even though there's state law that's already been passed, Erica, why is it you think that groups still say, hey, look, we're still going to do it? We're not even, either they don't know about it, they choose to do it, even knowing about it. What are your thoughts there? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think it's more of the learned behavior, right? And that they feel, or these individuals feel, that this made them stronger, right? That they are from a generation of that this was okay, and that it made me stronger, it will make you stronger type of situation, right? That's not always the case, right? Everyone has their own learned past, their traumas, all these different things. And one thing I wanted to mention, because this was something I was thinking about the other day, which has to do with something you just said, right? Intentional. A lot of individuals, when they're doing these acts, right, they may think, I'm not intending to harm, right? It was done to me, and this is just something that's a part of it. I'm not intending. Something can become intentional once you continue to do it. You're seeing that it's causing harm, right? Let's say if someone's crying, something's happened physically, right? You're seeing it's creating that harm. Now the intent is there because you are continuing to do that act, right? Or to not do an act if you do you don't act to help the individual, or whatever it is, right? Depending on what state you're in and what they defined as within intentional. But for most parts, intentional, it can turn into something intentional. And I know that a lot of different schools at one point, they had different rules that had said like intentional and unintentional, when
Right.
really that's not really it, the unintentional, right? Because you may not intend to harm someone. It's that your mind, after seeing something
Mm-hmm.
and after seeing that act is causing harm, you continue to do so. Now you are intentionally doing it, right? There's a big difference between unintentional. You fall, you hit someone by accident, right? You didn't
Right.
intend that, but there's an evilness to it, right? When you're intending, when you did it, and then you see that it's hurting and you continue to do it. Now
Agreed.
it's intentional, right?
Agreed.
So a lot of students and even adults are not really thinking about these terms, and people think, oh, negligence, it just means you're reckless, and there's actual legal terms and prongs that are attached to these different words. Sometimes we throw out the words negligence and reckless very loosely, and we don't realize, as it relates to the law, that there's this whole process that has gone through in order to determine whether or not you were negligent or reckless or any of that. And I think this is, again, where education is key, right? And I try to tell our members, at the end of the day, it's about protecting everyone, not just your organization or anything like that. It's protecting everyone. To me, when you protect any individual, you're protecting the organization in itself, right? Your legacy. And these are things that they really need to think about. And the fact that you doing something, you can single-handedly end your future. single-handedly. And do you know, maybe some people might look good in orange, but do you really think that that's a great look for you, you know? And imagine the emotional scars and harm you're doing to others, right? Their family that has to deal with all of this. You know, you're still here, they're not. And
Right.
a lot of individuals assume that, oh, well, you know, if it's not physical, I'm not harming anyone. And that's why the laws are important, right? Even the federal law, because it talks about emotional. And a lot of people do not connect hazing with emotional distress and all of these different psychological issues, but it's a big part of it, right? So it's extremely important that we have these types of talks, not only with our youth, but also the alumni, right? And with all members of any organization, whether it be Greek, in high school, bands, or any of that stuff, right? It's important to have this as a wide discussion.
Thank you for that, Erica. So I want to go back to the word intent. You mentioned that, and from a legal aspect, when you're in a trial, you know, a criminal attorney is going to look at that very strongly. Does the act that have led to either a death or an injury, you know, was that an intentional act as an aggravated assault, whether it's going to be something that, you know, assault and battery? Where does the severity, when it comes down to, where does that fall under? And I guess, what do you think in terms of at a state level, they're going to actually look at in terms of what they're going to present in front of a jury or a judge in terms
Yeah.
of these cases?
So, I mean, with prosecution, and this is in almost all states, right, that they have their blanket list of what it is that they need to prove up in order to win their side of the arguments, right? And then, of course, defense, they have mitigating factors and things of that nature. But one of the things that is difficult with cases where an individual passes is going to be, what was the actual cause of death? Like, did in Caleb Wilson's situation, right, was the punching which led to the seizures? Was that what really led to the seizures, or was it some other issue that occurred that triggered
Like a health issue, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of
Right.
different factors as it relates to that. And that's something, you know, defense attorneys look at. What is the actual medical history of the individual? What was going on? What was the force of the blow? All these different components that they're going to have to be looking at in order to prove that there is some doubt as to that these were the causal links with what happened, right? Versus with prosecution, really, it's going to be at the end of the day, them being able to show that these types of actions are reckless, and that, you know, if it were not for what occurred, he would have still been here, type of situation, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this is somebody's child, you know, and
Yeah.
I'm very concerned for the parent. Let me just say rest in peace to Caleb Wilson, and many victims, their families, anyone who's watching. Our love and light and grace goes to you. This is all respect due. We just want to be able to share how we as a community can help end hazing, and to talk about it, I think, is going to be incredibly important, because where the news cycles, you know, drop these cases and they no longer talk about them, we talk about them here, and we do that so that we can give refuge and reflection. So if you're those who are watching, please understand we're giving much respect to them. If you're just joining with us as well, go ahead and like and subscribe. We're having this conversation on the YouTube channel. So if you're joining in from TikTok and you're just kind of hearing me not talk for a while, I am listening to Erica Ramos, legal expert and attorney with representing the Lambda, Theta, Alpha, Latin Sorority Incorporated. And so she's going to be sharing her perspectives with me, and she's already doing that as well. So thank you, Erica. But I kind of go back to the Caleb Wilson case. So I'm looking at, according to the affidavit that was filed in East Baton Rouge Parish, about 9 pledges were taken to a warehouse leased by a fraternity member's father. They were told to change into gray sweatpants, wearing boxing gloves. Fraternity members lined them up and punched them in the chest. Caleb McCrae is 23 years old, is accused of striking Caleb Wilson. He made that
it allegedly made that fatal blow to Caleb Wilson 4 times. Caleb collapsed, became unresponsive, and appeared to suffer a seizure. Instead of calling 911, according to the affidavit, they drove him to the hospital, changed his clothes, and told staff he collapsed playing basketball. Cover up. So Caleb was then pronounced dead shortly after arriving. Where is the accountability going to happen? When is that going to happen here? Because that is what is concerning. I am just trying to understand as if I was the parent who got that phone call. My son was where? He did what? Who is responsible? How did this happen? The coroner reported only a small bruise on his chest with more forensic testing pending. Now McCray faces criminal hazing and manslaughter charges. 2 others, Kyle Thurman and Isaiah Smith, the alleged dean of pledges, face felony hazing charges. And what we do know is that they are due back in court sometime next month in October. So more to come in regards to where that will be. But under Louisiana's Max Gruver Act, hazing that results in a death carries up to 5 years in prison and fines up to $10,000. Manslaughter can mean up to 40 years. When you hear that, Erica, you hear about that, what do you think, is going to be essentially the outcome likely in terms of punishment for Caleb McCray, the co-defendants here between Kyle Thurman and Isaiah Smith? Do you think more folks should be, a part of this based on others who might be involved? How does that look like, do you think?
Yeah. So for one, it just makes me think of this book I read about the gods of guilt, right? The gods of guilt is the jury, right? And that's why it's extremely important to properly pick a jury. And the facts of the situation, they don't look good. They don't look good for those defendants, right? We know that this is a heinous act, that this was horrible. And Caleb would have been here with us today, right? His parents, his family is suffering with this. And I think when a jury hears something like this, right, especially it's unavoidable to get an individual who doesn't have, even if you don't have kids or anything, right, who have seen something in their past, who has family, has friends, have anyone who's gone through something, right, where someone has either passed or something has happened, right? This is one of those things that it makes you outraged, right? And for something like this, I don't see them walking away. Like,
yeah, I don't either, to be honest.
I do not see them walking away. I don't know how someone can sit on a jury and not feel extreme pain and anguish for this young man and for his family.
Absolutely. And as an attorney, you sometimes have to paint the picture for the jury and walk them through that night. And I think about it. I remember as I replayed it, I actually, try to help envision it and paint the picture for a parent and seeing what it might felt like for Caleb to be in this warehouse, to be amongst maybe 4 or 5, 7 other gentlemen who he's standing next to side by side. Yeah. And there is a 300 to 250 pound person, either older than him with a lot more force, because he was a small kid. Caleb Wilson, not, he didn't have much on him, at all respect to the family when I say that. But knowing that, and then walking him through, showing the boxing glove, that a boxing glove was then picked up as if he is in a ring, in a professional match, if you will. And that blow, not knowing how many punches it took, again, 3 punches or so, 4 punches, that's unclear. But no matter what, that becomes the next step. And then at that moment, your child stumbles back. And everyone's now looking like, what's going to happen? What do we do? How do we? If you ever seen the movie Burning Sands on Netflix, it is exactly the same process in which they presented it. The director of that film went to Howard University, is a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So that it's a process that has been going on. They're taking it out of the same playbook. Okay. And you can't tell me that if you are a parent and you are part of an organization that you would stand by and say, this makes sense, even for my child. That's crazy.
Mhm.
That's insane.
It's
That
disturbing.
young man, and I'm just saying, I'm going to cut you off here, Eric, but like as a parent, then you're knowing, wait a minute, okay, what do we do to fix this? How do we cover this up? Time passing by. Someone could have taken him to the hospital right away. Nothing was done at that moment. Everyone's trying to figure out what can they do, what kind of story. So we say he was playing basketball. Send him, put him in the car. It's after 1 o'clock in the morning. Get him to the hospital, drop him off. He fell playing basketball. We don't know what else has happened. That's insane to me, Erica. So knowing that as a prosecutor, where do you think, as far as liability and statements, what do you think they're going to have to do to present this and, I guess, get to a conviction? Because that's essentially what we're all looking for at this point.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it is going to be about making sure that they paint that picture for the jury, right? That they, maybe they may go visit the site. Maybe they may have put up the photos of where they are, right? You have to be able to show the jury what they cannot see, right? Paint the picture of the emotion, paint the picture of what's going on. If his, were to be his line brothers, I'm sure that this was extremely emotional and detrimental, right? Who wants to see something like this happening? Right. And then one of the other facts is these are all young men and they just want to be a part of this organization. Right. So this also goes to the consent thing, letting the jury know, right. Talking about that consent, it does not matter. It has to do with power, right? These individuals, young men, no matter what age they are, right, that they want to be a part of the organization. So the organization, those who are leading, have the power over those individuals. There's an uneven bargaining chip, if you will, right? So they're willing to be a part of this. And Caleb standing there is, he's standing in solidarity with his line brothers, right? He's thinking, I'm going to make it through this. I am going, this is just one more thing I need to get through in order for me to get to the end result, right? And really understanding that mindset, right? Because there are individuals that talk about, oh, well, they were there and they wanted to do it, but showing them, right? Because you're going to have people on that jury that are also going to think like the defense, right? They have a job to do, which is to defend their clients zealously, regardless of if they did it or not, right? That's what the law has attorneys do, right? Whether your client is wrong or right. So the prosecution, it has a tough job in the sense of there are going to be individuals on that jury who are going to be like-minded on that side as well. And being able to show that there is uneven bargaining power there, and that, kids these age, their frontal lobe, it's not advanced,
not fully developed.
Not developed. So how do we expect them to make the correct decisions? It's about the education so that they understand these things are not correct. And then this goes back to alumni and the organizations in a whole, and then the schools and society as a whole, right? We have a job, which is to educate each other. And the prosecution has to be able to educate them and to show them, just because he was there doesn't mean that this was appropriate for this to have occurred. Does not mean that he should have lost his life. It does not mean that, too bad he made a mistake. That does not mean that.
Right.
There's going to be people who are like that on the jury, right? Because they need to be able to have a jury of your peers. So it's going to be all different types of minds that are going on there. So although we have the law, and as lawyers, we have to be able to prove certain prongs within a law, it does not mean that there is not the level of emotion that's involved, right? There is. Everyone is human, right? So that jury, they have to listen to the law. They get notes, they get instructions. What does this mean? What does that mean? But at the end of the day, how are you painting that picture? How are you showing this is a life that was lost, right? And that regardless of if it was a young person that did it or not, the fact that it was done, and it should not have been done. And this is going to change the trajectory of how the law sees different things, right? Because so many times we hear about organizations who just settle, right? And you don't see these things. This is going to change history.
Yeah.
This is important.
I hope so. I don't know in turn. I think definitely in that state in Louisiana for sure. It seems like the prevalence of hazing in the South even more strongly. Just recently, I just got this news where a young man came out to put a federal lawsuit out. His name was Raphael Joseph. Just so briefly taking a break from Caleb Wilson here, but a student named Raphael Joseph filed a federal lawsuit against the University of Southern Mississippi and the new Theta chapter of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Joseph says he basically began the hazing happened in December of 2022. Pledges were allegedly deprived of sleep and food, threatened, and even had money stolen. But things escalated in April 2023 during what was called a Hell Night. Many of you are familiar with that term, which was supposed to be the most brutal night. But that night, Joseph says he was beaten repeatedly with a 2x4 plank of wood. The result, he spent 11 days in the hospital. He says he needed surgery, a blood transfusion, and months of rehab just to learn how to walk again. So here's the part that makes this case especially significant. Joseph claims university officials knew hazing was happening allegedly and did nothing to stop it. He's not only suing the fraternity, but also university itself under the federal law, including the potential Title IX violations. His attorney, Bakari Sellers, called the hazing criminal violence and abuse, not tradition. So this case isn't just about what pledges are endured inside one fraternity. It's about whether schools themselves can be held legally accountable for turning a blind eye. I do believe that schools do hold the obligation. Let me just reference also, just kind of shifting back to Caleb Wilson here at the Human Jukebox at Southern University. This is the marching band that Caleb Wilson was a part of, and he was an excellent, excellent performer in that group there as far as the marching band itself. Very talented. Playing the trumpet, I believe. If I got that wrong, my apologies. I believe that is right. But played that instrument. But it is suspected that he may have had experience or any type of interaction with some type of hazing there. We have what we call stepping stone hazing process. That means that if you are just getting on a campus, you're joining either a marching band or a smaller group, it's 9 times out of 10, or in some capacity, you're going to go through some level of hazing as well. And that particular group, the Human Jukebox, had a history of hazing at Southern University as well. So I believe it was at Baton Rouge, because there's 2 different campuses there. So I'm very, I'm almost certain that there was some type of pledging process to where he said, you know what, I did it at Human Jukebox. I could do it, with this Omega Psi Phi, this next step. This type of thing, is this something you come across, Erica, as far as, looking at this new case that just happened at a federal level, where hazing has happened in, some form or fashion that gives a person enough, thinking, hey, I can keep on going into the next step with that as well. Do you think it's just a constant thing as far as hazing kind of stepping down or stepping from a past experience from there?
Yeah. I mean, we are our past, right? Our past traumas and all these different things and things that we experience. And this is not something new that our society has been dealing with, where you go from one organization or, the army, you go from one thing to another, and then it's happening somewhere else, right? So I do think it is very prevalent. It's a problem, and it's an epidemic. It's like a disease.
Sure.
You're literally stepping from one to the other, and this does happen.
So is a prosecutor going to look at the false statements that were made and look at also the delays in the medical care? Would that impact the liability, even from a criminal and a civil side to this case, as far as Caleb Wilson goes?
So yeah, so I can speak more civilly. Definitely will have an impact in that sense. Should there be any lawsuits or anything within that nature, this probably would be one of those things where they would end up settling out, right? Because um, the types of liability and all that are attached to this is a lot. And then as it relates to criminal, right, the criminal behavior, the aspect, these are all things that are taken into account as to if they could have, right, made a last minute decision. Let's do this instead. They had the time, they had the ability, they had the will, they did not do so. So these are things that will be spoken about in court. These are things that will be taken into consideration, right? Because sometimes even when someone does something bad, they can make a last minute judgment call. Hey, let's do the right thing, right? But it wasn't done here. Otherwise, this may have been a different situation. So these are things that as a prosecution side, they're definitely going to want to make sure that they hit all those points, all of those different factors. And civilly, it definitely paints a picture of extreme liability because there's different steps and stages to liability in which you have to be able to prove.
Thank you, Erica. And I just wanted to kind of walk through, we're talking about this on the prosecutor side. We look at this in different angles. Now I'd like us to be able to kind of have a courtroom experience and try to understand what's at stake here. Imagine this case is going to trial. So what would each side say, the prosecution and the defense? And we can also look at this from all angles, like the Tim Piazza case, other state laws where non-hazing is involved as a statute. We look at it like this. So imagine this going to trial. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the evidence is undeniable. Caleb Wilson entered that warehouse alive. He was subjected to a hazing ritual. Lined up, told to put on sweatpants and struck in the chest. After 4 blows from the defendant, he collapsed and never regained consciousness. This wasn't horseplay. This was hazing, reckless and criminal under Louisiana law. And instead of calling 911, the defendants lied, changed his clothes, and misled hospital staff. Those actions show that they knew what they were doing was wrong. The Max Gruver Act was created for this very reason. Caleb Wilson is dead because of hazing, and those defendants must be held accountable. The defense argument is going to say, also possibly, likely, not showing, it's just what I'm seeing here essentially as an example. But members of the jury, the state wants you to connect the dots it cannot prove. The coroner's report showed only a small bruise, no broken ribs, no internal bleeding, nothing suggests that these chest punches caused Caleb Wilson's life. The truth is, we don't know what caused his collapse. It could have been an undiagnosed condition. The state has no medical certainty, and there was no intent to kill. That these young men used gloves because they believe it was safe. They never meant to harm Caleb. Tragic, yes. Criminal, no. You cannot convict on speculation. So this is how both sides might frame this case on a Louisiana courtroom. We don't really know, but where I want really is to bring in your perspective. Erica, when you hear those two sides, what are your thoughts? Does that sound like similar to reality? Do you see that playing out? What's your thoughts?
So yeah, so definitely with the prosecution, I think that is more in line, right? I think too that they might want to be, not to say like theatrical, but when you're painting a picture, right, you want them to know, like if it was the 4 blows, they didn't hit him not once, they didn't hit him not twice. They continued to hit him, and he fell on the floor, right? And to create those images and the pauses and to be able to speak with that conviction, right, is important for prosecution. Whereas with defense, I'm looking at the ages of the individuals that are on trial, 23, 25, 28, right? Maybe at least for the 23-year-old, right? He's around that age where his frontal lobe is not developed. A defense attorney is going to want to show the human side of their clients, humanize them. and about how, and I could tell you that this is something that we even do in law school our first year, right? Where we're doing mock trials and we are charged with not only representing the prosecution side, but also doing the defense side and seeing how we would do with either, right? So I myself have had to do that, and we all have. And really one side, they're hitting home on certain parts, and then the defense is coming in to bring in the whole. So like you said, certain things about medical and all of that, right? But it's now going to be about the fact that for them, the human factor in it, right? About how humans make mistakes, the factor of one of them being young, the same age as that who passed, right? And how now this tragic incident not only is the loss of life physically, but the loss of life of a defendant as well, right? Because their life is over. That's it.
Right.
They ended their life. So it's going to be now about flipping that script to show the human aspect of the defendants. Rather, the prosecution is going to show the animalistic characters, the loss of control, the ability to see that you are hurting an individual, a life, right? So they're going to be flipping it in those senses to try to strike a nerve with the jury, right? With the courtroom. So that's where the differences are going to be.
Thank you. And I'm also wondering if the University of Southern is going to be held, or could they be held possibly liable? Do you think that they share some of that punishment in that, where they should have had some type of reprimand? Because they have taken action as far as removing the campus charter of Omega Psi Phi, the Beta Sigma chapter. They've removed all signs or paraphernalia related to the organization, and have taken steps to be as present as far as hazing awareness. I'm sure definitely after these recent incidents. But do you think that on a civil level that there should be culpability in there as well?
Well, I mean, if they had knowledge that this type of culture existed on their campus, even if it's something word of mouth, right? In different states, that's enough to cause an issue with liability. The fact that they know and don't say anything. So really, it's going to be about, what did they do leading up to these incidents, right? Was their education? Were they doing anything to ensure that the students were well prepared? What was their preventative measures to attempt to make sure that this type of thing didn't happen? So not only the aftermath, really, what were they doing as a university, as a campus, to ensure that these things were not occurring? And how often does it occur, right? Because that's a sign of what culture is being perpetrated on your campus. So if you know that it's continuously happening, what is the record on your campus? Did you just suspend someone not that long ago? Did something happen even right around the same time? Was other things happening? Did you halt all Greek life to find out how are all the pledges doing with all the different organizations? So all of the different things in combination are going to be things that are going to be looked at as it relates to liability and ensuring that, as a university, that they are either liable or were they actually trying to take steps, right, to try to prevent something.
Agreed. I know almost always there's a first sign is, hey, we're not responsible. We don't want to be involved. This happened off-site. Those are some of the common themes that I have heard. In my cases, especially the school that was involved or that I was a part of or on campus, immediately moved to say we have no liability in this. We took steps as a reactionary to help your case and stuff like that. So it seems like it's going to be really a organization level situation, to where when these cases happen and someone gets hurt, harmed, loses a life, the organization's at fault, but essentially the school is still an agent, and in my opinion, of us facilitating the organization on campus. So there has to be some level of education that has to be, put out there to say, hey, this organization, whether it's Omega Psi Phi, a marching band, Alpha Kappa Alpha, whatever the organizations is, that we're going to take steps to protect our students. But what do you think going forward at this point, knowing that there's several cases that have happened, this federal lawsuit now, what do you think are going to be preventative measures that you think schools are going to take to, further on to kind of get this, knowing that we have anti-hazing prevention as well? What do you think they're going to do to help? Because there's so much
So
litigation in that.
yeah, there's a lot of litigation, and there's a lot of universities that are scared, right? Because, and rightfully so, to know the potential that you're entrusted with these lives, right? And things are happening. So rightfully so that they're scared. This to me also goes back to the issue of the DEI, right? And all of the removing of organizations and all these different things. And unfortunately, I think that for those organizations that are doing their job, I think it just makes it a bigger issue where all organizations really have to band together to be like, enough is enough, right? Because this is how your organization is going to be taken away, right? A lot of universities are using that as an opportunity to remove certain organizations. They are looking at their events. They are looking at things that are not registered, right? Because at events, hazing can happen, right? The law also says in maintenance of your membership. So there's various aspects to hazing that could happen amongst members and other individuals. So it's not like a one particular event, which is just pledging. It could be throughout any course, right? There's organizations that once you join, they have them doing these things after the fact, right? So when you think about it, the schools, this makes sense to me that they're looking at your events now. They're scrutinizing certain things because they have to protect themselves, right? And it's one of those things where some schools, right, we would like to think that they're thinking of the individuals protecting the students. But as a lawyer, I know that one of the things that we do is we're thinking of, not to say the optics, but we're thinking about outcomes. We're thinking about longevity, sustainability, right? These are the things that we are hardwired to think about, right? So when you are talking to clients and telling them to do certain things or whatever, you're thinking about what is the bottom line. It's not necessarily the individual life. And I think that's where a lot of schools and organizations go wrong, because what they're not thinking of is the fact that if you do think of the individual, you are protecting your organization, you are protecting your university, you are protecting. So you have to be able to make sure that you look at it from a full perspective. And I think these universities are now getting it. They're slowly but surely, they're getting it, whether it be, contracting outside help in order to create these hazing prevention programs, halting all Greek life altogether, halting all organizations altogether as soon as they get a sniff of something, right? Which really is what they should do, right? Because you don't know what else is going on there as soon as you hear one incident happening. And then also, again, looking at events, looking at all these different things, because we've heard of things, you see them on all these shows that they're popping up on Hulu, on Netflix, on all these different things where things are happening at parties, right? Where they're hate and they're bringing their pledges, or they're bringing people who are interested in their organization, and it's happening there, or it's happening to their members in itself. So really the universities, I think, slowly but surely are getting on board, which is what they should have done a long time ago. Sometimes the law, though, moves slow, right? I can tell you, I've been involved with lawsuits that can take years and years, right? The law moves slow. The law moves really slow. And when you think of American history, even civil rights, all of those different things, how slow did that move? right? It took persistence. It took those banding together. And that's why something like this is so important for organizations to band together. That's why for my organization, even though hazing prevention is a week, I wanted a month. The more, the better, right? The more education, the better, I say, right? And I think there's so many different aspects involved and so many intricacies as it relates to psychological, physical, and everything that you can never be too safe. You need to educate. And the schools, I think, are slowly getting it. Maybe not all, right? Because this is the situation we have here. But it's important that they get on board.
I agree, and I think that it needs to happen sooner than later because, they are the national organizations. I know they have clauses, they have the rules. It's out there, and you'll hear a member of an organization say, "We are a non-hazing sorority. We are a non-hazing fraternity." Yet they are bad actors out there, chapters who run rogue. My mother said it in a video. It'll be posted here later in the week. She shares her side and experience of how hazing it impacted me. So you'll be seeing that soon. But knowing your experience, you come from a sorority that emphasizes sisterhood and service as well. From your experience, why do you think that these organizations across the board nationwide are still having trouble with chapters that are out there? And what do you think they can do to get a sense? So I position it as just send somebody who can just pop in. Right? Like, what if we have someone that, says, "Hey, I'm a member, I'm from the national chapter. I'm doing a surprise audit, right? I know that there's a pending intake line. Nobody can be confirmed if this person's name isn't from the start of the set or the start of the process to the end until we've, verified or whatever." So is that possible? Like, what are we looking at there?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things is that, like, even me sitting on a national board, right? We're all in different states. We're all in different places. So, you can't really say like you're going to be able to get to all of them, right? And I think about this with especially the really large organizations, right? Like the D9, they're super large, right? But I think having that knowledge that there's the potential that you don't know if someone is going to come, that we're teaching you, hey, there's a potential, you have to make room for us, right? And don't think we won't show up even if we got to get a plane ticket type of situation, right? I think them knowing that does create that, hey, let's get it together type of situation. I also think too that it has to do with, even when you hear something like, I've defended people before, and to me, it's not about going and accusing, right? Because sometimes people talk, sometimes people try to get people in trouble, file false allegations, do all these different things, right? We see it in the American justice system all the time, where people end up being falsely accused. At the same time, if you hear something, it's about course correcting. Being like, you know what, if this is happening, I'm not going to go and I'm going to say to you, I heard you were doing this, blah, 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 right? Without even knowing. But if you hear something, why not say, hey, I just wanted to come and see you're here. You go there, right? You see how they're interacting. You see something that's not supposed to be done. Hey, actually, sis, bro, let me show you how this is supposed to be done. Course correct. So that you build, again, because you're dealing with people who, individuals, their frontal lobe is not developed, right? You want to make sure that you're teaching them properly, right? And how do they know if you do not educate them to do better, right? You could accuse, you can do all these different things. It's either going to have a couple of different things. It's going to be a flight or fight type of situation when you accuse, or it's going to be a denial, right? I didn't do anything. I didn't this, I didn't do that. But if you can go for yourself and actually be a leader and show them the way it's going, how it should be, even the alumni, right? Alumni from the chapter, alumni from the area, whatever it is, even if you're from a different chapter, being able to show them, hey, I noticed you were doing this. Why don't we do this? This is not right. Let's do this. Let's course correct. So then you start to build their confidence as an individual, as a leader, right? Because then they grow, they understand what's right. And you tell them why this isn't correct. And then if they continue to act in this behavior, now this is a problem. Now you better say something. Okay.
Right.
And just because you're not a leader within the organization doesn't mean you don't have a voice. Right.
Sure.
So I think a lot of people are hesitant because they're like, oh, I can't stop someone. Oh, I can't do this. Yes, you can. It just takes one person at a time. And even if you don't want to come in hot and heavy, you did this. Why don't you teach them? Teach them to do better. Teach our youth to do better, right? My organization, we have alumni chapters too. I know several organizations do that, and they have intake as well. It can happen at all of those. We know that in the Army, we've heard things, right? That this is where this type of culture is perpetrated, and then it just spilled on out into everything else, right? So with that being said, even as adults, it could happen, right? All these different instances can happen, and it's about teaching how to do better and remembering your why. I always talk about remembering your why. Why did you join the organization? Why do you want to continue to being a part of this organization? What are the principles? What are the purpose? What is the driving force behind whatever your founders, created this for? And then remembering that when your founders created this, the laws were different then, right? How would your founders feel about that now if they knew the things that your orgs or your schools or your marching bands or whoever was doing? Do you think that you are honoring their legacy, right? Why did you join this? When I first started, I joined because I wanted to have that sister. I have a younger sister and she joined as well, right? I was her assistant pledge mistress, and I had promised I would never do lines ever again, but I did another one. And I wanted to show her that there is the ability to do service and to have sisterhood and to have these different things and to uplift and to remember your why. What is it that you want, right? So they may not be my blood sisters, but I want to be able to empower them, encourage them. And that's what we have to remember. Why did we join? When you're a young person going into these places, and then you're the ones who are leading these young people, and you're also young, right? Because a lot of these organizations are having the college students themselves lead these lines. Why did you want that position? Was it because you wanted the power over an individual? Or was it because you wanted to uplift and to show them what it meant to be a brother, what it meant to be a sister, what it meant to be a part of this organization? What is your why? And if you find yourself having a power trip, it's not for you. You're not meant to be a leader. It's not about power.
Yep. And we thank you so much for that, Erica. I'm just going to say, it's parents who are watching right now who are feeling like, they want to make sure and want to be assured that even though their kid is not their kid anymore, they're grown, that they're still their child, that they have worked so hard years and years and years to ensure they get a great education, that they can see that their son or daughter make it across the graduation burning sands, and get that degree and just, be a part of their family, continuing on. I am certain to understand that, they want some assurances. They want to know that they're going to be safe and that they're going to be okay. And how do we shift the ideology? I know there's a great ire for just to be a young person on a college campus, whether it's a PWI or HBCU. A part of that experience is being a part of acceptance, and it's the pressures that either come from classmates who say, "Yeah, I'm a part of XYZ." They wear the paraphernalia. It's that kind of human function of, I see this, everybody else is doing it, I want to be a part of it. What is it going to take to get it right? And you're starting off small on the hierarchy of a college campus as a freshman. The first step you're thinking is, okay, I got to do this. What is it going to cost? I got to go through this next step. So, we have to shift the culture. We have to shift the perception of tradition, and not only, ask our, members of these different organizations to have better, practices that keeps people safe, but also influences the young people as well going into it and say, hey, you should want better for yourself and keep yourself safe, knowing the dangers it's not worth risking your life for, and that there's a better way to do it. So we're challenging that identity. And I think that's why many members who are a part of these organizations are saying, well, if I'm not hazing like we used to do, what do we do next? How do we still make it to where it's still a process, right? Like it's still something that warrants, like you earned it, you know, not giving the bag on anything that personally you've experienced or you would say it makes it sense, but how do you navigate that? You know, what do you think is going to be best going forward for that?
Yeah, I think it is hard, right? Because you have the old school frame of thought, right? With a lot of the organizations whenever they were founded. And then you have the zealous members who have, they're still, doing all this stuff or whatever, and they're big within their Greek community or within their bands or whatever it was that they joined, right? That they stay around, and it's kind of like being a donor, right? With the school, it's like the same situation where you give back to your organizations, no matter if it's Greek or not Greek. I think the challenges are that they need to start thinking outside of the box, right? School is hard. School is a process. School gets you to it, right? You're not meant to have harm. School gets you. It is a process. So you don't have to be sitting in a classroom. It doesn't have to be that, but at the same time, think about, again, what was the why? What was the meaning? What is behind it, right? Are you supposed to be teaching them to be scholars? Are you supposed to be teaching them to be businessmen, businesswomen? What is the goals of your process, right? If your goal is to make them a stronger professional, what makes professionals, right? Emulate that, right? One of the things too that is hard, and it's something that I think about it, and because when you think about it, hazing happens at a lot of different levels. Okay. Even, I'm going to tell you this, even in law schools, it happens. I've had many of friends who've told me stories about the humiliation, the chastisement, all these different things that occur, right? And it's because they want their process, right, is for you to think on your own. But how else can you get someone to think on their own? How else can you encourage them to get to that end thought, right? There's other ways to do that. And education has proven that thus far,
Agreed.
like, I'll never forget one of my professors that he wouldn't allow us to have computers in our classroom, in our law classroom, right? And we would all be really nervous and everything. And we'd have to write our notes down and write really fast. And we had to print things out, bring it with us and all of that. And we were cold called, right? That's what they do in law school. They just randomly, you don't know if it's going to be you today. You might be on the cutting board. And, but because he gave us the tools to be prepared, we were able to think. There was no need to yell. There was no need to throw or do anything, right? Like some of my friends have told me have happened to them. There was no need to embarrass them. They were able to learn because they got the tools necessary to be able to do that. So if that means looking through your process and trying to figure out where can we make these changes, right? Then you try to do it. To be quite frank, right? Everyone has their own past, their own experiences, right? So even talking to an individual, you can trigger them emotionally, not knowing that they've gone through something. Why don't you learn about these individuals? Why don't you, it's just common, right? As humans, we learn about each other. Right? Like my sister, before she went through her process, she told me, Erica, don't say this, don't say that, don't talk about this, don't talk about that. I know you're going to be my APM, but don't do this, don't do that, blah, 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 whatever. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize. And you're my sister, you're my younger sister. And I didn't realize. And it's not even yelling or anything like that. It's certain words that trigger her, things that don't trigger me. And we grew up with the same parents, right? But we grew up in two different schools. I'm
Hmm.
9 years older than she is. So it's difference in mentality, difference in everything. So when you think about it, getting to actually be a human and learning about people, it's not about numbers. We see this all the time where people are just pumping out numbers. Do you know them? Do you know who they are? Do you know if you bothered them? Do you know? And it drives me crazy. Like, I love seeing it. I'm like, wow, they have so many. But at the end of the day, how is that sisterhood or brotherhood if you don't even know them? You don't know them. Like, granted, when an organization grows and grows and grows, just like a university with its alumni, right? You're not going to know everyone. But that particular class, then they have smaller classes. Then they keep segregating into even smaller classes. That's how my class was in law school, right? And then you start to learn about each other. And all it takes is being human, understanding what are we trying to achieve, encouragement, motivation, enrichment. What are we trying, positive impact for the community? How do you do that? Not with the psychological harm either, because that's where people go next. When they think about the physical, they're like, oh, but that's not real psychological. They could deal with it. That's not how this is. That part is more subjective, right? A lot of people say, oh, I'm going to say boo and I'm going to get a hazing something. No, don't be that crazy. Okay.
Right.
It's not that
Right.
extreme. It has to do with getting to know someone, because then you know what you're doing that they don't like. Okay. Just because you're okay with it doesn't mean someone else is okay with it. Get to know them as an individual, right? And as humans, we're all guilty of this at some point of another, whether it be working relationships, boss, employee, whatever it is. But if we would just stop and think of the human aspect, then there would be a lot of changes, I think. But it takes all of us to really do that.
Agreed. Thank you for that. And I 100%, I think you're leading by the example just by being that bigger sister for your blood sister. So I'm just curious with you and your sister, is it a different set of bond in terms of the relationship between you two, separate from the organization, now that you're also family as well? Like, how do you kind of
So
pivot those
it,
two?
it's definitely weird because when she's with her lines and she's like, yeah, I spoke to my APM. I'm like, you mean me? Like, so it's weird. It's weird.
Uh,
I love her. It's weird. But I feel like it brought us a little bit closer because we are so far in age. And I lived in New Jersey. She lived in New Jersey. I moved out of New Jersey. Then she followed me. She hates when I say she followed me, but it's like she followed me. And I was happy she did. And it definitely brought us closer, I would say. And now she has an understanding of why I think certain things, or, like I like to say that my process taught me how to get through law school. Right? Because it really made me think about different things. It really educated me, empowered me. And I would spend hours in the library. And if you ask me what I did when I was in college, I was not spending hours in the library. Okay. But in law school, I was. I became a completely different person. And I went through my process as a law student. Okay. I was in law school when I did mine. I joined through an alumni chapter. So, and my sister joined through my chapter as well. So it brought us closer together in that sense. And now we share certain things. She used to be like, oh, I'm wearing burgundy and gray and stuff like that. And now I'm like, now you're wearing it, right? Before you were wearing it, now you're wearing it. So it definitely changed the dynamic and all of that, but it also brought her closer to like her line sisters and all of that. And me making sure that I treat them all the same. Doesn't matter. You're not my blood sister. I love you just the same, So I think stuff like that was important. But yeah, she's grown so much. Even her memory is better than mine. She's learned different tools on how to learn and all these different things. Like, you've surpassed me. You're gonna have to teach me how to study for my next exam. But yeah, it's definitely brought us closer together, and I think it can do that when done the right way.
Right. Right. And I think I'd like to see more of those stories of this a non-abusive loving partnership and sisterhood and brotherhood where there's really camaraderie, and I think years and years, because I know friends who are in organizations, and they those line brothers, line sisters, they know them till, up in age, like years, 10 plus years, 15 plus years. And there's this excitement of going back to the campus and being able to celebrate, come together, and talk about old times or what's going on currently, right? So those lifetime bonds. And I think that for sure I would never want to discount. I'm going to open it up to the audience to share any questions you have for either myself, Erica, who has been so kind to be with us from the Lambda, Theta, Alpha, Latin Sorority Incorporated as well. While we wait for questions to join in on the chat side, I just want to just kind of bring to the audience some questions to kind of think about for parents. What do you think is the biggest concern you have about sending your kids off to college and joining campus organizations now? Is there any fear there for you right now? You have any thoughts in mind on that end? Would you know what questions to ask a school about hazing policies before your child enrolls? Are you looking at the school's history revolving hazing? Do they have any hazing cases in the past, right? Do they have any language in reference to anti-hazing at all, right? So what are you doing at this point to look at what school that your child is going to, as far as what they're taking as far as step on a stance against hazing? If you're a student or alumni watching, a part of an organization as well, have you ever felt pressure to go along with something during pledging or initiation that made you uncomfortable? Why not? Did you feel like there was just this insurmountable pressure where everyone said you knew what you signed up for? Someone said that on my channel before, you knew what you signed up for, and I thought that was really alarming. You can watch that video on my YouTube channel. If you saw hazing happening on your campus, would you feel safe reporting it? Why or why not? There seems to be this sense of, if you report it, you say something, you're this snitch, you're this person that, basically blew the whole operation. And, now you're going to be a target. You feel like you'd be a target on campus. If you saw hazing happening on your campus, even more so, what are you going to say? Who are you going to turn to? What steps or resources are you going to use to make that report? Last question is, what do you think organizations should do to create bonding and tradition without hazing? So some things to think about, some questions to think about as we navigate, these cases. There are many, many stories of those who have been harmed and alarmed. Any further thoughts here, Erica, that you'd like to kind of just share with us while we wait for questions or thoughts from the comments?
Yeah. I think too, it's, when I think of hazing, it's like any criminal act, right? That when people see certain things, they tend to shy away. Like if I didn't see it, if I may believe I wasn't there, or I wasn't, that I'm not going to get in trouble and stuff like that. But when you think about it, it's how are you sleeping, right? Knowing that that's happening, right? And really thinking about, would you want your future kid to go through this? Would you want your sister, your brother, your uncle, whoever it is? And I think about that, with my daughter. I would love for her to be a part of my organization. I mean, she may choose someone else's organization. I don't know. She might be like, Mom, you're not cool. I don't know. I don't know what she's going to do when she gets older, and I have to be able to trust that it's going to be okay. And how do you trust as a parent that that's going to be okay? I think, seeing all these different things, I've gone down the deep dive of all the hazing cases, deep dive, especially within my position, right? Needing to know these things and watching these documentaries and just educating myself more and more on these topics. Things as a parent I think about is, why not have these people's numbers in your phone? Right. If my child is going to be at this person's house, right? Mm-hmm. Why not? Can I take y'all to dinner so that I could get to know you? You know what I mean? Or come to my house for dinner. Let's talk, right? Let me meet your parents. What's wrong with that? I see nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? And why doesn't it occur more where parents are like, let me do a check-in? You can do that. You can tell them, you want my daughter or my son to be a part of this process? Okay, fine. They want to be a part of it, but I want your number on my phone, and you better pick up the phone when I call. Okay. Otherwise, they will no longer be a part of that process. Okay. And I will tell your school or whatever the case is. Right. And organizations too have to understand that it's not that a parent wants to start trouble for you. They just want transparency. Right. They want to be able to sleep knowing that their kid's going to come home. Okay. And I don't think that's too much to ask for, to have your number so that I can make sure my kid's coming home. Right. I think that that's important. I think, you know, even first generation parents may not realize you can ask, hey, can I know who all these people are? Hey, do you have an informational that is for family? Hey, can I talk to someone on your national board? Hey, can I do this? You know what I mean? Can I send in a question? They don't realize that they can do these things. And as a parent myself, when I'm thinking about this, if she chooses, well, even if she chooses mine, right? Years later, I know this as within the organization, no matter where she decides to join, or if she decides to join a band instead, I'm gonna have them on my phone. They're going to know me, right? Even if they think I'm crazy and that scares them and then they don't want to mess with us, whatever. I don't got to threaten them. You know, it's just being able to have that transparency. And I think that, you know, there's this culture of secrecy, right? We see them in all these documentaries about secrecy and all. Oh, they're going to say, okay, there's a difference. As an attorney, I know there's a difference between secrecy and confidentiality. What are you trying to hide, right? Confidential should be maybe if there's a specific piece of information that is for your organization that you don't want any of the other organizations knowing, right? That's a different story. But secrecy as to where you are, secrecy as to like who's there, like what's going on, right? That's a whole different plate. And I think that young students, they don't understand that there is a difference, and it's our job as adults to teach them that there are these differences, and that you know, you don't have to do certain things if you don't want to, and even if you want to, think twice about it, right? Doesn't mean that it's right, you know. There has to be more education. And when I think about what happened to Caleb, right, I mean, it's immense sadness that I have. I do not know that family. I do not know them at all, but immense sadness as a mom. And thinking about the fact that, yes, this is literally out of the playbook, burning cans, right? This is out of their playbook. And I think about, nobody's watching this.
Yeah.
These things are made to educate you guys, right? The documentaries, all these different things. Why are we pushing those out more? Why are organizations pushing this out more? Like, hey guys, stop, you know, or even the schools. We all know these things exist. Show it to them. Knowledge is power.
And I agree. And I think that, you know, when that movie came out, if you didn't know or not, I'm not sure if you remember when it first came out, but there was the reception of people who are in organizations just through the biggest, like, who do you think you are, essentially? Because before that movie, the only movie that in reference to hazing that came out was School Days. And people thought like School Days was like this silly movie that came out and it was just like, you know, fun and games. But Burning Sands really showed like, wait a minute, somebody is a part of an actual organization that made this film, because they got the details way too accurate for my liking. That's essentially what they were saying, but they were really, you know, they were saying, oh, you know, that was, you know, who do you think, why do you all put that out there? You know what I mean? And so it was like, it's just like, you know, if you feel attacked, I have to say this, if you feel attacked, what are you feeling attacked by? Are you feeling attacked that, you know, this is an actual occurrence that is costing people's lives? right?
Mhm.
Are you looking at the
Feeling
cases?
guilty.
Correct. Are you looking at the cases that has happened in the news? Not only Caleb Wilson, this goes way back since the 70s with
Yeah.
the first case of Robert Basile, who was a part of Omega Psi, who was trying to join Omega Psi Phi, but died during a hazing.
Yeah.
Joel Harris, many others that I have talked about on this show, and I have so many more to say and talk about. But it isn't just a one-time occurrence. This is a multitude of different cases. So when you look at that film and you say you're getting upset by what? You're
Mhm.
saying that you agree that, hey, if they're going to join this organization, they should expect that the risk is possible lifetime harm, death, the psychological effects. I knew a guy who was a part of an organization who I was trying to join, that was looking to join or being a part of that process. He came out a whole different person. And I understood exactly why when I experienced the same thing he did. And it especially for the nights that I went in and saw in that process. And I just seen him just being around like completely different, more sinister, more insidious than anything else. The scariest thing that you'll ever see. So people don't think about all the psychological effects that come with that, how it can mentally change you. Hell night, if you come from a Christian background, if you're Christian, truly Christian, why are you submitting yourself as a Christian
Yes.
to put yourself through something called a hell night?
And
Think
so many
about that.
organizations that say that, we are Christian based, like, the foundation, our founders, and all these things. And there is things called Hell Night. Like, why? Why?
Right.
Why does this exist?
Yep. Why emulate the very thing that's causing the destruction, the despair, the suffering? These are things that
Hmm.
are in the Bible. I mean, I'm not want to push rhetoric for people that feel like, hey, this is not something that we're comfortable with, but I have to say I'm a Christian person. I'm saved. I have to also recognize that these are the reality. This is something that we're trying to protect people's lives, keep people's spirituality intact. That's important to me. That should be
Yeah.
important to you if you're watching this. We didn't receive any questions, and that's okay. So if you'd like, please leave a comment after this video is fully posted. We'd love to be able to address that in the comment section. Erica Ramos, Erica with Lambda, Theta, Alpha. We thank you, like Sorority Incorporated. We thank you humbly for being a guest on the show. And I think we have so much more that we'll have to talk about
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there's just this feeling like there's more to the conversation. And I think even
Mhm.
at a case by case scenario with these acts that continue to occur, it's going to be something that we'll continue to discuss. What do you think?
Yeah. Or even as the case unfolds with Caleb.
That's correct. That is correct. And is the follow-up that happens here coming October. I'm going to be wanting to address from what actually is happening during the trial aspect. This federal lawsuit that happens with this young man with
Oh
that
yeah.
newly came out. I'm curious to see at a federal level what that will look like. Civil
Yeah.
liability, criminal.
Hmm.
That's going to be an eye-opening as well.
Hmm.
So I'm looking to see where does that play into, how are these the legal ramifications, what does that look like, the punishments, all the things there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you for just sharing your voice. If you've just got into the conversation, you've been here with us, and go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already at Cultured Unplugged. We tell the stories that the schools rather bury. This is where the silence ends. Erica, I can't wait to have this conversation with you again. Any other thoughts come to mind that you'd like to share before I take off? We take off
No,
for the evening.
no. I just want to thank you for having me, and I hope that whoever watches this, that you go and educate yourselves. Whether you're in an organization, not in an organization, you're a parent. Just know you can ask for transparency. Get that transparency, and it doesn't have to be something that is daunting, right? Get the answers that you need.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erica. And tonight, again, just kind of recap, we looked at Caleb Wilson's story, not just as a tragedy, but as a test case, one that could define how hazing laws are enforced going forward. From Tim Piazza at Penn State to Stone Foltz in Ohio to Jordan Hankins in Chicago to Caleb Wilson in Louisiana, the names are different, but the pattern is the same. Violence, silence, and cover-ups. Hazing is not a tradition. Hazing is abuse, and until schools, organizations, and communities stop covering it up, we will keep losing lives. So to our viewers, thank you for being here tonight. Please subscribe, share this episode, check out the links in our description, resource from stophazing.org, guides for students. Please donate to the National Hazing Research Fund. This is life-saving research. It helps parents, students alike, and ways to support the Lives Remembered, Futures Protected campaign. Together we can end hazing. Together we can make sure Caleb Wilson's name and every name on that list of 105 students lost since the year 2000 and growing, unfortunately, is never forgotten. I'm Chris, or Uncle Chris, and this has been Cultured Unplugged, where silence ends. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.